In a small garage in Menlo Park, California, in 1998, two Stanford students were sitting in front of an old computer with a bulky screen, slow internet connection, and a mess of cables scattered on the floor. They had a crazy idea to create a machine that could organize all the information in the world. Sounds ambitious? Of course. Impossible? Back then. Yeah. What was the initial name? BackRub. Yeah, it sounds like a massage place, not future tech. But behind that weird name was an algorithm that could assess the relevance of web pages like a human brain. 26 years later, from that cramped garage, a giant was born that is now in our pockets, in our living rooms, in our offices, and even in hospitals, cars, and airplanes. Google isn't just a search engine. It's become humanity's backup brain. The question is, how did a garage with two college students grow into a digital empire worth trillions of dollars? How did Google go from just being a tool to search for cat picture to becoming a force that can influence politics, the economy, and even our personal lives? And will Google always be in the lead, or could it be toppled by smarter new technologies like artificial intelligence? In this video, we'll explore Google's journey from ground zero to 2025 through stories, innovations, controversies, and moments you rarely hear about in the mainstream media. So sit back, put on your headphones, and get ready, because this journey is going to change the way you see the internet forever. Imagine the atmosphere at Stanford University in 1995. This magnificent campus in the heart of Silicon Valley was already known as the birthplace of big ideas. In the air, there's a scent of coffee from the student cafe, the sound of bikes whizzing by on campus paths, and conversations about technologies that would change the world, even though they often sounded like just crazy ideas from young folks. Amidst all this, there were two graduate students who would later change the fate of the internet. Larry came from an academic family. His dad, Carl Page, was a pioneer in computer science. His mom, Gloria, was a programming professor. From a young age, Larry was used to looking at computers not just as tools, but as learning toys. By the age of 12, he already knew he wanted to build a tech company. Sergey was born in Moscow, Soviet Union, and moved to America as a kid because his family was looking for freedom. His dad is a mathematician, and his mom is a NASA scientist. Sergey grew up with a sharp logical thinking ability, but also a curious nature that sometimes made him like to challenge other people's arguments. According to many sources, when they first met, Sergey was assigned to be the campus tour guide for Larry, who was considering enrolling at Stanford for grad school. But instead of clicking right away, they ended up spending time debating. Sergey thought Larry was too serious, and Larry thought Sergey was too chatty. Ironically, that difference became the start of their collaboration. They both realized that even though their styles were different, they shared a common interest: figuring out how to organize information on a large scale. We have to remember, Stanford in the mid-90s wasn't just any college. This is where Hewlett-Packard, Cisco, Sun Microsystems, and Netscape were born. The environment was brimming with venture investors, professors pushing students to start their own companies, and labs that had access to the fastest internet in the world at the time. For Larry and Sergey, this was not just a university, it was the launchpad for their dreams. From an idea in the library and long discussions in the cafeteria, they decided to work on a research project that aimed to tackle a major internet issue: accurate searching. Back then, search engines existed, but the results were often irrelevant. They wanted to create a system that not only searched for keywords, but also understood the quality and connections of information. This is where they started laying the foundation that would eventually become Google. Imagine this scene. It's 1996, a student dorm room at Stanford filled with the smell of cold coffee, Cables tangled like instant noodles, and the noisy hum of a CPU fan spinning away. In one corner, Larry Page is typing quickly on a thick CRT screen, while Sergey Brin sits on the floor, holding a notebook filled with scribbles of math equations. Their project had a pretty weird name, BackRub. Not because they liked massages, but because the system checked the backlinks on a website, kind of like seeing who was recommending that page out there in the web. Why are backlinks important? Back in the 90s, search engines worked in a pretty simple way. They matched the words you typed with the text on web pages. The result? Lots of random websites could pop up at the top just by stuffing keywords over and over. Larry and Sergey saw this flaw. They had an idea. In the real world, authors who are frequently cited usually have a good reputation. Why can't the internet evaluate pages based on the same principle? And that's how the PageRank algorithm was born. This algorithm doesn't just count how many links point to a page, but also assesses the quality of the pages giving those links. So if a big site like the New York Times links to a small site, that's way more valuable than 100 links from random blogs. Fun facts about PageRank. The name PageRank comes from Larry Page's last name, not from the word page in webpage. So technically, every time PageRank is used, Larry gets a bit of legacy branding for free. This algorithm was initially run on a DIY server made from old computers, with a wooden case that they crafted by hand. The server consumed so much electricity that Stanford started getting worried. Not just about the bills, but also the risk of overheating. Early hurdles. BackRub wasn't perfect. Sometimes, the algorithm would consider a page that was being negatively talked about as still important, just because it had a lot of incoming links. Larry joked once, if there's a website about the ugliest cat in the world, and everyone links to it out of disgust, BackRub might think of it as an important source. Problems like this made them keep tweaking the algorithm, adding parameters, and testing hundreds of thousands of combinations. The early impact of BackRub. Even though it was just a research project, BackRub started to gain popularity among Stanford students and professors. A lot of people would come to Larry and Sergey's dorm room to try out the system because the results were way more relevant compared to other search engines like AltaVista, Excite, or Lycos. One day, Larry realized, if we open this up to everyone in the world, the internet will never be the same again. And that marked the starting point of the transition from a student hobby to the foundation of a company that would change tech history. The name of a company often comes about through a long process, brainstorming sessions, or even expensive branding consultants. But Google? It actually came from a typo. One afternoon in 1997, Larry Page and Sergey Brin were sitting with Sean Anderson, a friend and their discussion partner. They were brainstorming for the perfect name for this new search engine. Larry wanted a name that was not only unique, but also represented the scale of their mission, to organize all the information in the world. Sean then suggested the mathematical term Google, which means the number 1 followed by 100 zeros. This name was first popularized by Milton Serrata, the nephew of mathematician Edward Kastner, in 1938. For Larry and Sergey, Google was the perfect symbol for the internet, limitless, massive, and ever-growing. When Sean tried to check if the domain google.com was available, he accidentally typed google.com in the browser. What was the result? The domain was still empty. Larry and Sergey saw the name on the screen, and for some reason, they really liked it. Google sounded simpler, catchy, and easier to remember. Without much debate, they agreed. Let's just go with it. The first Google logo was designed by Sergey Brin using free software called GIMP. The colorful letters were inspired by other search engine logos, but with a unique twist, a pattern of blue, red, yellow, and green, colors that are now iconic. Fun fact, the color sequence was chosen to give an unconventional vibe, symbolizing that Google loves to break the rules for the sake of innovation. It took about a decade, but in 2006, the word Google officially entered the Oxford English Dictionary and Merriam-Webster as a verb, meaning to search for information on the internet using the Google search engine. This is a branding level that's incredibly rare to achieve, from company name to becoming part of everyday language worldwide. At first, Google was just an ambitious toy living in a Stanford dorm room. Larry Page and Sergey Brin turned that small space into a digital experiment lab. In one corner, there was a stack of homemade servers made from recycled components. LAN cables dangled like tree roots, scattered across the floor. The CPU cooling fan buzzed loudly, drowning out the sound of the dorm's AC. Imagine the vibe: the smell of solder, the dim desk lamp, and two students who sometimes stayed up until 3 a.m. just to test minor changes to their algorithm. The space and electricity problem. As more people started using their search engine, they needed to add more servers. The more servers, the hotter the room. The hotter the room, the bigger the electricity bill that reportedly began to make the campus officials shake their heads. Larry and Sergey started to realize the dorm room was no longer a big enough space for the big brain they were building. The entry of Susan Wojcicki. This is where a name will forever be linked to the history of Google: Susan Wojcicki. Susan is a friend of their friend who lives in Menlo Park, about 15 minutes from Stanford. She had an empty garage that could be rented out, and like many people in California at the time, she probably thought renting her garage to tech students was just a way to earn some extra cash, not realizing that history was about to be made in that garage. Susan remembers that her garage back then was just a simple space with folding doors, a cold cement floor, and empty shelves on the walls. Larry and Sergey filled it with folding tables, plastic chairs, and, of course, piles of servers. The garage that became a legend. This garage isn't just a workspace, it's the first headquarters of Google. There were no receptionists, no fancy meeting rooms, not even decent air conditioning. But here, the PageRank algorithm was perfected. The early Google logo was created. Big ideas were discussed. Long-term impact. Susan Wojcicki's garage is now considered one of the most historic sites in tech, on par with the garages of Hewlett-Packard, HP, and Apple. In fact, in 2006, Google bought the house back. The moment that changed everything. Moving from the dorm to the garage is a small step physically, but a huge leap in mentality. Larry and Sergey are no longer just students working on a project. They are now startup founders, building the future of the internet. Imagine this: a garage in Menlo Park. A whiteboard filled with scribbles of algorithms. Two Stanford students, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, are presenting their search engine project to a guy who already has a big reputation in Silicon Valley, Andy Bechtolsheim, co-founder of Sun Microsystems. Andy showed up super early, way before the usual meeting time. The sun hadn't even fully risen yet. He only had a short amount of time, because he had to rush off to another meeting after this. Larry and Sergey jumped straight into a demo of Google. It wasn't just about keyword searches. The results were actually relevant and fast, something pretty rare on the internet back in the late 90s. Andy doesn't talk much. He just nodded slowly, then said, "I don't need to hear the rest. This is convincing enough." He took out a checkbook from his bag, wrote a check for $100,000 to Google Incorporated, even though, at that time, Google Incorporated wasn't even officially registered as a company. Fun facts. That check couldn't be cashed right away because Google didn't have a bank account under the company's name yet. Larry and Sergey had to wait a few weeks to sort out legal documents before they officially founded Google on September 4th, 1998. So technically, Google was born with a check in hand, but they didn't have a place to keep their money yet. The impact of that $100,000 check. That amount turned into the initial fuel for Google to buy additional servers. Back then their servers were literally made from IKEA wooden racks. They were that frugal. Hire their first small team. Start expanding from just a campus project into a startup ready to challenge giants like Yahoo and Alta Vista. Imagine a tech startup that has just been born, without big financial power, without fancy offices, but already daring to declare something that sounds like a moral promise. Don't be evil. This simple sentence first appeared in 2000, included in the Code of Conduct document of Google by Paul Buchheit, one of Google's early employees who also later created Gmail. In the tech world back then, this sounded unique. Other companies were busy talking about profit, market share, and competitive advantage. Google, on the other hand, put morality front and center, at least on the surface. Meaning and application at the beginning. For Larry Page and Sergey Brin, don't be evil isn't just a gimmick. It's a guiding principle. Focus on users first. The money will follow. Don't manipulate search results for sponsors' gain. Be transparent in marking ads. Ads should be clearly distinguished from organic search results. Innovate for the common good, not just for investors. In the early 2000s, this made Google extremely popular with the public. While other search engines were cluttered with annoying ads, Google stood out with a clean white page, colorful logo, and a single search box. No blinking banners. No autoplay music. No pop-ups. Symbol of public trust. In the eyes of users, Don't Be Evil makes Google seem like the internet hero. This helped them grow rapidly because people trust that Google will provide the best results, not just the ones that are most financially beneficial. It's a strong emotional branding. When people think of Google, they think of a safe place to search for anything, from fried noodle recipes to medical research. Changes and controversies. However, as Google grew into a tech giant, this motto started to feel tested. Privacy criticism. User data is being collected en masse for advertising. Market dominance. Competition is deemed unhealthy by some parties. Censorship. Google's version in some countries is subject to local censorship rules. In 2015, when Google restructured into Alphabet Incorporated, the motto, "Don't be evil," was still in the Code of Conduct, but was moved from the opening statement to a closing note. Then in 2018, that phrase was removed from the beginning of the document and only appeared at the end, almost like a footnote. For some, this became a symbol that Google had transformed from an idealistic company into a big corporation with complex interests. For others, it's just a sign that the slogan had become too popular to be tied to just one company. Don't Be Evil is one of the most iconic examples of how a simple phrase can shape a company's identity and also serve as a benchmark for the public to criticize it. Like all promises, the bigger you are, the harder it is to keep. The beginning of the growth surge. By the end of 1999, Google had started to show its fangs. From processing just hundreds of thousands of searches a day, that number skyrocketed in a matter of months. By the year 2000, Google had successfully recorded over 1 billion searches in a year, a number that once sounded impossible, but now was a reality. Imagine, back then the internet was a far cry from what we know today. Slow connection speeds, a limited number of websites, and most people weren't used to searching for info online yet. But Google managed to grab attention with its fast, relevant, and user-friendly search results. Technology that brings change. The secret behind this surge lies in the ever-improving PageRank algorithm. Unlike other search engines that rely only on the number of keywords, Google uses a method similar to human thinking, assessing a web page based on the quality and quantity of links pointing to it. It's like a digital vote, where pages with the most backlinks are considered the most important and worthy of being displayed at the top of search results. This approach allows Google to deliver more relevant search results that satisfy users. Moreover, Google also introduced a simple page without ads or cluttered images, just a plain white search box in the middle of the screen. Simple, fast, and clean. This minimalist approach turned out to be the main strength that attracts millions of users. Funding and team expansion. A surge in users and recognition from the tech world caught the attention of big investors for Google. After the initial check from Andy Bechtolsheim, Google kept bringing in major funding from various venture capital firms, including Kleiner Perkins and Sequoia Capital. With this fresh cash, Larry and Sergey started expanding the team, recruiting top talents from the tech industry. They moved from a tiny garage to a bigger office in Palo Alto, marking a new era. Google as a tech startup ready to compete on the global stage. The Googleness moment, a culture that makes Google unique. One of the reasons Google has grown so fast isn't just the technology, but also its unique company culture. They embrace what they call Googleness, a work philosophy that encourages innovation, freedom of expression, and hard work without losing the fun. For example, they give employees 20% of their time to work on personal projects that could be the next big innovation. This idea has led to products like Gmail and Google News. Ready to be the dominant search engine. In 2000, Google officially launched its AdWords advertising service, which became its main source of revenue. This allowed Google to stay free for users while also becoming a highly profitable business. From just a regular search engine, Google has now transformed into a tech company with a complete ecosystem: search, advertising, digital maps, email, and more. All these products started reaching millions of users around the world. But Google's journey doesn't stop here. From being a giant search engine, they're stepping into a new world that was once unimaginable. Smartphones, artificial intelligence, and cutting-edge technology explorations that will drastically change the world. We'll dig deeper into how Google has gone global and mastered modern technology in the next section. Thank you for watching. If you like it, you can like, comment what you think, and subscribe for more interesting information next. See you in my next video. Bye.